Welcome to another episode of Relentlessly Resilient, where real people share their real-life stories of the trials and heartaches they've faced and the tools of resilience they've found in order to still live their best lives. I'm Jennie Taylor.
And I'm Michelle Scharf. Today, I'm very excited to have a good friend of mine. I've known Kitty Dunn for many years. I don't even really want to add him up, but we've known each other for quite some time. Kitty shared with me a story while I was working underneath her on the Hatch campaign. We were both working for Senator Hatch's reelection in 2012, and she was kind enough to hire me. And, we formed a really interesting bond on that campaign with all of the staffers. We had a unique relationship with all of the people that worked on that campaign. And Kitty and I really developed a beautiful relationship, and there were times that we had some downtimes, and she really opened up and shared with me a story that was so touching about the loss of her son, which she's going to share for us that story in a little bit. But what I want to share with you, Jennie, and our audience is that this story is part of my process and what would later become, and I didn't know it at the time, but would later become a healing and a hope and messages of guidance for me in my own journey. And so I really have been excited since we started doing this podcast. I talked to Kitty early on. I asked her if she'd be willing to share. We finally have the opportunity to have space that we could get her scheduled on. And I'm just excited to introduce my friend who's like a sister to me, and Kitty Dunn. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Michelle. And Jennie, thank you for the invitation. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we are glad to have you.
Where would you like me to start?
Well, just tell us a little bit about your family and about your kids, and then tell us, a little bit about David.
Okay. Well, I'll just tell you very quickly. I was born and reared in Cache Valley in River Heights, went to Cache County schools through high school, and then went to Utah State University, where I met my husband, Mike, and we were married during our last year of college, and we eventually had 3 children. Now we have 8 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren.
Mike, awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, but boy, they're so much fun. But Mike joined the Air Force just after graduation from college. He went in to pilot training, became a fighter pilot, and we enjoyed about 27 years of his very successful service in the Air Force. We lived in 10 to 15 states. We lived 9 years total in Germany and the Netherlands. And so we had a very fun and active life.
What was his job in, didn't you guys have in Hawaii, a deployment or a assignment?
Yeah.
What do you call it?
Hawaii was our last assignment. And when he retired out of Hawaii.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And then we moved here to Germany. But I'll just tell you a little bit about David. David was my middle child, my second son. He was a very smart, curious, fun boy. He was always in a hurry. He was always wanting to know what's next. What are we going to do next? I remember we were at Disney World at one time having a wonderful day, just as fast as we could go through the whole park. And he kept saying, what are we going to do tomorrow? What are we going to do tomorrow? He just couldn't wait to get to the next thing. And I think since he did not live a very long life, I think he always knew. And he said to me once that he always knew he wouldn't live a long life. But we were in the Netherlands, stationed in the Netherlands, and he was 14. He was a very popular kid, an athlete. He was an excellent runner, a sprinter. He was setting records on his track team there. But he began to have problems and was diagnosed with asthma. However, this diagnosis came with no tests, no x-rays, nothing. They just decided from the symptoms he was having that it was asthma. But it got progressively worse until finally, after a little longer story I won't go into now, finally he was hospitalized in a Dutch hospital in Heerlen, Netherlands. It was a big hospital that was close to where we lived, where they said that he had pneumonia. And then after about a week there, they said, well, he's cured. You can take him home. However, the symptoms and his problems got even worse. He was having trouble breathing and sleeping and just functioning altogether. And so we went back to this hospital, and this is in socialized medicine, by the way. Here's a good point to make. We had to fight, argue, threaten, and finally pay a lot of money to obtain the x-ray that they used to say that he was cured. We got the x-ray, looked at it, and very clearly in his lung was a fist-sized tumor that was clearly malignant. And this is the x-ray they used to say he's cured. Well, they knew that whatever he had was bad, and it's easier just to send him home. So when you have another show on socialized medicine, we can talk more about that.
Oh my goodness.
But we went to our home. We admitted him then to Landstuhl Hospital. It's an army hospital in Landstuhl, Germany. And he there was diagnosed with lymphatic cancer. They did not know exactly what kind of lymphatic cancer. They just knew it was lymphatic and that it was bad. It had spread. It was surrounding all the vital organs, not in the vital organs, but surrounding and threatening the vital organs. So they said, we don't have the ability to treat this here. We've got to send you immediately back to the States. When that doctor said it's lymphatic cancer, I don't know what kind, she said, but it's bad. We hope it's Hodgkin's. If it's not, and this was in October, and she said, if it's not, he won't be here for Thanksgiving. So my world stopped at that moment. Yeah. And I was in absolute limbo. And I'm sure you and many of your listeners have had that experience where you really think everything just stopped. And it felt like for 5 minutes, nothing moved. We just stared at each other. I'm sure it wasn't that long. But he brought us out of that when he asked the doctor, am I going to die? And I came out of my shock to hear the doctor say, I don't know. So it was awful. And I'm sorry, I still get emotional about it. But
you do not have to apologize on this show for tears. We've been crying we've record these every Monday, and we do about 3 hours, and we've spent the whole morning in tears.
Yeah, no, it's difficult, but I'm glad that it is, because it means I have not forgotten David and forgotten what was his story and what he had to go through. But anyway, that night in the hotel, as we were trying to figure out what are we going to do, I had my very first ever in my life panic attack. And it was awful, but it was just, startling. But anyway, David the next day left via helicopter from outside of the emergency room. He and David left, flew to Frankfurt, were put immediately on a military plane that took them immediately to Wilford Hall in San Antonio, Texas. And within 24 hours, he was admitted and in the hospital there. I, meantime, went back to the Netherlands to get my other 2 children, to get the house ready to move out of the home we were in, to sell a car, to ship a car, move from overseas back to the States. It's a big job, but we got it done. And then we joined Mike and David at Wilford Hall in San Antonio, Texas. In the meantime, he had had a biopsy, and we did know now it was Hodgkin's disease. And it was, however, in stage 3B. So they had to act very fast. So because it was spread so far, Hodgkin's is treatable and curable. But normally catch it in an early stage. David's was not. So he had to have very, very aggressive chemotherapy One of the chemotherapies he's had, the kids called the red screams because it was colored red, and it was as it was entering via into his arm, into his veins, it would burn for the whole half hour. And so that's where red screams comes from.
Oh, my goodness.
So David endured a very aggressive chemotherapy and radiation and got through that okay. But then just after, when the chemotherapy had ended, he contacted shingles, which just dissipated over his entire body. And so it was threatening his life. At that time, they had an antiviral drug to use for it, but it was new. They weren't sure about it. They didn't know exactly what the long-term side effects would be, but it was his only chance. So that was administered to him, and the shingles went away. The doctor did tell me sometimes we suspect that it affects the kidneys somehow, this antiviral drug. But anyway, David was cured of the Hodgkin's disease, but I knew, and I'm not going to go into the details of how I can say I knew, but I knew David was going to have a bigger challenge to face later in his life that would be more difficult than what we had just been through. So that brings us quickly then to when David is 32.
Yes.
And after normal teen years, however, taking us down some roads that we wish he hadn't, that were difficult, and he had some challenges and struggles, but he managed to get through it and eventually joined the Air Force himself and became a radiology technician. He worked in that capacity for about 6 years.
Was he interested in that because of his interest in, or because of his real misdiagnosis early on? Was that something
Yeah, because of the medical life, or what he had, medical experience he had, it was interesting to him, and he wanted to do something in the medical field. He did have plans for later in his life to go back to school and become a radiologist, but of course he wasn't able to do that.
Yeah. We need to take a break. And when we come back, this is a good point for us to take a quick break here. When we come back, you can tell us what happens in Hawaii and the challenges that lay ahead for David. It's so amazing because I do know the story, but he endured so much in his life. And it is interesting that his personality was that what next personality, because he definitely sounds like he was one of those people that just wanted to eat life up, that he just wanted to take it all in and experience it. And it's a good thing that he got to as much as he could, because it was a short life. We'll be right back. And when we come back, we'll hear more from Kitty Dunn. And we're back with Kitty Dunn. And Kitty, you've been telling us about David and his real struggle in overcoming Hodgkin's and almost his misdiagnosis, really. And then he is able to champion that, and he's able to overcome that, but has a terrible bout of shingles, which is excruciating, and it was all over his body. So I'm sure he probably wished death at certain times during that process. But he comes into his teen years and goes on and becomes a radiology technician. And this is at a job at a hospital in Hawaii. Is that right?
No, actually, he was in the military, and he was in Las Vegas.
Okay.
Nella Air Force Base.
Okay.
By this time, Mike has retired. We're living in Utah, and he's at Nellis, and he stayed there for about 6 years. And then he left the military. But just in the last while that he was in the Air Force, he was having bad back pains. And he went, the doctors told him it was probably kidney stones. There's a history of that through his father and his father's side of the family. And they just assumed again, without any tests or anything, they diagnosed that, well, you've got kidney stones. While
Did they just send him home?
Excuse me?
Did they just send him home, say, well, you'll pass these stones?
Yeah, you'll pass them, and it'll,
you'll be fine.
All the normal things. But anyway, he has left the Air Force, and he decides to go back to Hawaii because he lived with us when we had lived there about 6 years prior. And while he was there, he was dating a girl, Jennifer, and he got a job at the hospital there in Honolulu, and returned and connected with her. And they very quickly decided they were going to get married, and were very soon. They were married at the end of November. The pains in his back continued, and he finally had a CAT scan there at the hospital where he was working, and it revealed the tumor and much damage to the kidney, and it had spread to vital organs. And he called one night. About midnight, I got the call. And whenever I answered the phone and it was David, he'd always say, "Mom," with great enthusiasm. Mm-hmm. But when he said that night, he said, "Mom," and I knew that here we were, and that it wasn't going to be good news. I am so sorry, Michelle.
You do not have to be sorry. I promise you. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, he said, "Mom," and told me he'd had the CAT scan. He said, "I've seen it." And he said, "Mom, I know how to read the report. I've seen the same images of many patients. They aren't going to be able to save me this time." So, again, the world stopped turning. And again, I'm numb, I'm scared. And here was the bigger challenge that we were going to have to go through. So they had been married a month, and David is officially diagnosed with terminal cancer. So he has to leave his job, has no insurance now. So they come with Jennifer's son that she had from a previous relationship, David's stepson, and they come to live with us here in Brigham so that we could climb this mountain together. In the meantime, we discovered that Jennifer is pregnant. That was wonderful and scary and bittersweet. So he enters into a study at the Huntsman Cancer Center. He had kidney in the collection duct, or cancer in the collection duct of the kidney, and they were doing studies on that particular rare cancer. And so he was in this study, which was great because he got a certain amount of care, and I think it extended his life for about 2 months. Ultimately, yeah. They were wonderful there, by the way.
They really are fantastic. We tried to get on a study, but unfortunately, John was not selected, because they randomized the draw. And so it is awesome when you can be able to partake in those studies.
There's a story about that I don't think I should share here, but I'll share it with you privately, Michelle, and about being admitted into that Huntsman study. But David died 8 months after his diagnosis, and then his daughter was born 6 weeks after his death. So here, Mike and I were faced with watching him do this and then burying our child, and then after he's buried, in a matter of weeks, seeing his first child born. Everything was wrong. It wasn't lined up. And Michelle, how I always say, get your ducks in a row, line everything. It wasn't lining up. Logically, you understand, but emotionally and all, it was like, no, it's confusing, and it leaves you discombobulated at best.
Yeah.
So anyway, so his suffering was horrendous. His death was horrendous. David would not take enough morphine to go into any unconsciousness or coma or anything. He said, "I will not do that. I will not lie in bed and people have to change me and bathe me and wash me. He was alert until the moment he died. He got up and with the help of his father and his brother went to the restroom 5 minutes before he died. He was determined, very determined kid, and he was not going to die. He was going to be as strong as he could till the last moment.
Yeah.
And it was hard, made it harder for him because there was more pain. But he died with dignity. It was amazing.
It's so hard to watch those last minutes of life. And, Mike, your husband, and your daughter Alexis they came the day that John died to relieve me so that I could get up and go outside my house.
That was a hard, I remember. It was hard on them too, but it was very hard on you.
I know, and Mike loved my husband so much. But I really appreciated them, and it was so nice because it was such an act of love and service. And of course, I knew that they had already knew what I was going through. And there's parts of that story I've never shared publicly, and I'm not going to now because this is the time for your story. But we need to take another break. And when we come back, I know that you have some real valuable lessons that you taught to me that I would eventually take forward years later after you shared them with me. But they were such poignant lessons that they stood in my heart, and I was able to draw on them when the time came for me. So we're going to take a break and we'll be right back. And we're back with Kitty Dunn, trying to wipe up our tears here. We're all crying. This is one heck of a day, I'll tell you. Kitty, talk to me about those. I remember one story in particular, and I'll just lead you in on it. But the days leading up to my husband's death, he had been gurgling, having that death gurgle. I had called you, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I just need him to die. I just need him to die. He would not want this. And you had a story for me about, I didn't mean dead.
That's true. I remember that. And it watching your child, and certainly your husband also, or anyone that you love, but watching your child suffer this extreme pain is horrific. You can't stop it. You can't do anything about it. You just have to help him and watch with him. And David actually would plead for me he'd say, please, Mom, just kill me. Please, please. And it was horrendous. But during the last week when we knew he was going and he was just so struggling so much, I prayed fervently, please let him go. Please take him so he doesn't have to suffer. And I begged. But then at the moment of David's death, I had the very real thought in my head, I didn't mean dead.
Yeah.
I wanted him to die so the pain would end, but I don't want him to be dead.
Yeah.
And I remember, and I don't know, I may have said it out loud. I don't remember, but I didn't mean dead.
Right.
I just wanted to die. And so
Jennie's over here nodding her head like, yeah.
Yeah.
And
when we are in those situations of extreme, whatever we want to call this, trauma, sorrow, whatever's going on, our minds are going on in several different gears. The logic is not there. It's the emotion, and it's confusing. You know exactly what it's me now.
I do. We want the suffering to end. We want all of that to stop, but we don't want them to be gone from us either.
I'll switch just a little forward, and I'll tell you how that's one thing that it's hard for people to understand. David had been dead maybe a week, and I was talking to my sister, and I said, I visited his grave. I said, it's comforting to go there, but I just want to go down where he is and make sure he's okay. And her response to me was, oh, Kitty, you're not going to dig up that grave, are you?
Maybe. Who's going to stop me?
She did not understand what I was saying. I was mother. I want to go look at him and make sure he's okay.
Yeah.
No intention of doing the stupid act. I wouldn't do that for any reason, but that's not what I was telling her. I was telling her I have this insatiable need to go take care of my child. And she didn't get it. So I think what we learn from that is when people are going through this, they're going to say illogical things like that. And let them. Don't try to explain it away. Don't try to make it okay. Don't challenge it. Just let them say it. It may not make any sense to you, but it does to them.
Right.
I think that's 100% important, because when you're in that emotional, like you said, is it a trauma? Is it a crisis? Whatever word you want to use for it. That is not the time for logic and reason. That's not the time to try to explain things in a textbook fashion. It's the time to love that person and just be there and let that be
Whatever
okay.
Feeling, let them express it. And that's what I wanted to do. I got the common things. If he's in a better place, there are worse things than death.
Jennie's rolling her eyes.
I know he's in a better place. That's why I'm so mad, because I'm still stuck here. That doesn't help at all. That makes me twice as mad.
What it says is he's in a better place, which is better than being with you. And there are worse things than death, which would be living here with you. Now, that's not what they mean.
But that's how you can feel it.
The person who's grieving, that's what they're going to hear. And
Right.
you think, I don't care if it's better. I don't care. And I apologize if this offends anyone, but I was talking to my church leader, and I was telling how difficult I was having after his death and struggling with all this. And I said, I understand where David is. I understand what he's doing. I understand he's happy. I understand he's fine. And I understand he's progressing. I understand the whole plan. I don't blame God. I get it, but I don't give a damn. I want him back with me.
Kitty, I feel the exact same way. Like, I think those words have come straight out of my mouth, and I appreciate that you voiced that, because I can be very faithful and I can be very heartbroken at the same time. And it is not a lack of faith, and it's not that I'm questioning God, and it's not that I'm angry or don't understand the plan, but it still really, really hurts. And I think sometimes when we say things like, oh, he's in a better place, or, oh, God had a plan, I almost feel like that's minimizing the pain, which it's not intended to. I don't think people say that.
Well, it's invalidating.
It's invalidating. Like, I can say, I know my husband is in a better place, and I really, really wish he were here. Those are simultaneous. It is not either or. And I think we as human beings, and I think it's probably just a defense mechanism, we want to live in an either or world. I can be happy or sad. I can be faithful or afraid. I can believe in God or have no hope. And I want to say I have all of those all at once. And I think that's what grief has been for me, is this very simultaneous mix of all the highs and lows and the ins and outs. And it's not at all an either or. It is.
No, it isn't. And I think for just 1 minute, let's talk about Bible stuff. Even Christ did that in Gethsemane. Right. He understood the plan perfectly. He knew he had to do this. He knew he was loved by his Father. He knew he would get through it. But he said, do I have to?
Yeah.
I don't want to.
And let's talk about when Lazarus died. This is one of my favorite stories from the Bible, because Jesus wept. Jesus wept when Lazarus died. And Jesus knew Jesus was going to bring Lazarus back. I mean, that's the thing. Like, Jesus wasn't necessarily weeping because Lazarus was dead and gone, because he knew he was in a better place, and he knew he had the power to bring him back. I believe Jesus still wept because he watched Mary and Martha weep.
Right.
And he let them feel that, and he felt that for them. Even though he knew the plan, even though he was instrumental to the plan, he still wept at their weeping. And I think there is so much we can learn there in the Christian world.
I think so too. And so what we are doing when we express that, when we're grieving, is saying that you're not denying any truth. You're not denying any logic. You're not denying any of that. You're just expressing how you're feeling. Mm-hmm. And so we have to be allowed, and we have to allow other people grieving to express whatever they need to express, not try to explain it to them, not try to.
And not hold them accountable for whatever ridiculous thing they might say, because they're not really going to go dig up the grave. But I need to be able to say that.
Yeah. It's funny now, but at the time I almost slapped her. I thought, you idiot, what you hear when I say it?
Kitty, can I ask you a really personal question? I'm curious, what was that like for you as the grandmother of that new baby, and how did you help? What was the relationship like with Jennifer right after your son died, your grandbaby's born? I mean, I've never lost a child, but I've been the mother of grandchildren when the son was lost. You know, I'm trying to get a better understanding of my mother-in-law's perspective when my husband died. And here I am. I'm the daughter-in-law. I'm not her daughter. I'm the daughter-in-law, but I have my husband's children. And I can't imagine the mixture of emotions of bringing a beautiful new baby into the world, which of course is wonderful in life and celebratory, right after you buried that baby's father. Can you talk about that for a minute? Is it not too personal, or if I'm pushing too far, please stop.
No, I don't mind. I won't go into a lot of depth. David's wife, she's a good girl, but she is a little bit different and had different outlooks on things. So the baby is born, and she lived here. She was still here with us. She stayed here, and the baby was born here, and she stayed until December. But she didn't allow us, and I don't think she even understood that she was doing it, but I hardly held the baby because she always had it in her room and stayed sequestered in there. She didn't grieve outwardly. We didn't see tears. She didn't talk about it, but I guess this was her way of coping. And so sadly, we didn't bond with that little baby like I would have liked to. Then in December, she returned to Hawaii, and she had sent her son home ahead. He was 3, and he went back to Hawaii, and she then went to Hawaii. And so we have never lived around her. And Jennifer is not one that reaches out and, sends letters and pictures and communicates and calls, and she doesn't do that. And she doesn't know that is not normal. We could go for years and years and years and never talk to him. And then one day call her for something. She'd act like we just talked yesterday. She doesn't mind those gaps. So what I'm saying, without going into a lot of deep, it has been difficult and heartbreaking because we are not as close. There's no animosity. There's not a problem. She just doesn't communicate. And so we don't have the relationship that we longed for.
That's got to just be so hard on top of everything else.
Yeah, it's definitely a difference. Another part of the story, right?
It is. I don't want to do it here. I don't want to tarnish Jennifer. I'll just say it hasn't been what we hoped for. But I think, if you don't mind, I'd like to make one point. After he died, my point is I wanted to talk about it. And what I wanted to talk about are the details of how he suffered and how we suffered and about his death and what it was like to watch him suffer and die. And I wanted to talk about all those details and how I was coping or not coping. But people are either uncomfortable talking about those. There's 3 things. They're just uncomfortable talking about it, or they think they're supposed to say something to make it better, or they think we should just get over it after a certain amount of time. David had been dead not quite 3 months when I was called by the president of an organization asking me to help them do something. And I said, I don't know if I'm up to that. What they wanted me to do was read something for a woman that was in the organization that we knew was going to die. And it was an honor to her. And I said, I don't know if I can do that. I'm so emotional right now. And she said to me, well, he's gone. And so all of that problem and that trouble it's gone and over with. So you should be able to just move on.
Wow.
And I thought, it's a good thing you're not sitting in front of me because
I'd have to slap you too. It's a lot of slapping today, Kitty. These people just don't learn.
Well, in my head, I can be very nice. I mean, outwardly, and Michelle knows this, but in my head, I'm thinking, you idiot. I can kill you right now. It just was, how thoughtless was this?
Kitty and I have killed many people in our minds. We just don't act on it.
You haven't yet buried any of us?
Not yet.
We know what are.
I do like...
Because people are like that, my point is, then we who are grieving, we tend to push our needs, what we need to do and need to have and feel and say. We push them way down somewhere in our psyche, and they just fester there. When in truth, we should be able to take them out, set them out on the table, and analyze each one of them and figure it out, and take the time that it takes to examine them and work that out for us. But we hide them because people are uncomfortable. So my message is, let people talk. They need to express their thoughts out loud. You have to say it out loud, more than one time for your thought, your brain to process it, to get your brain around it. And all we need to do is just listen and avoid the temptation to be profound. We don't have to do anything.
Well,
just
back up and say that again.
Yeah. It's
to those who want to help someone who's grieving, all you need to do is listen and avoid the temptation to say something profound. Yeah. Can we write that down, Kitty? That was beautiful, because we do. We want to say something. We want to fix it. We want to give whatever will make us all feel better because this person's hurting. But we just need to listen and avoid the temptation to say something profound. That is profound.
The temptation to be profound, because I still, sometimes when I see someone grieving, I think, okay, what can I say? And I have to discipline myself and don't say anything, or validate it by saying, this is really hard for you, isn't it?
Right. To just be there in it, right? To say, I see you, I hear you, I feel you, and I'm sorry.
And I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do to fix it.
No.
And it's not our place to fix it.
I want to give another example of this and have you talk a little bit about this. And I hope I'm not stepping out of bounds. If not, I guess we can have Josh edit it. We'll make work for Josh.
Pretend this conversation never happened.
Josh loves me today, by the way. Josh is our producer here at KSL. He's awesome. So you had shared this story with me, and then later on, we go on and we attend the 2012 Tampa RNC convention together. And I'm a national alternate delegate. You're there supporting Senator Hatch, and I'm working with you on, the senator hosted a breakfast or something. But we're in, you know where I'm going, don't you?
Yes, I know where you're going.
And are you okay with this?
Yeah, that's fine. I'll probably cry, but that's all right.
So we're going into the convention, and Romney's being introduced, and they're making a plea to the humanity of who he is. And it was all very nice and lovely, although it was a little uncomfortable as far as for people that aren't LDS. It was very much a stake, a feeling like you were at a stake meeting, but also at a fast and testimony meeting. And so they had a parade of individuals who he had been their bishop for, coming through and talking about his humanity. And I have to say, I actually think Senator Romney as a person is an amazing human, and his family has done a lot of good. They're good people, and they're very genuine. I get asked that a lot by people, have you met them or whatever. They really are very good people. And I think that the intention was well. I just don't think that it came across the stadium in a way that really worked for the convention. But there was this one story of a family that had come and shared the story of their son who had also died of cancer. And, we Kitty and I had been sitting there, and some of the stories were kind of like, yeah, whatever, The story came up, and Kitty disappeared from me in a flash. She was just gone. And I knew what happened immediately. I could feel it. And
the story was so similar to my sons, and the parents are there telling about it, and I was identifying with them, and I've met Senator Romney too, and I had the same impression of him personally, and I could feel what they were feeling, etc. And then they said, our son, his name was David, and I was
and
gone.
That was it.
I was up out of that chair and into the hall as fast, and I was sobbing, which I don't normally do.
Not in public.
No, I don't do that except here on your podcast. And then
but you're in the comfort of your own home, and we're at the studio, so it's okay.
This is a safe place.
Well, here, let me just tell you where I'm sitting. In my office, which is the room that was the bedroom that David was in when he died. I'm sitting on the exact spot where his bed was when he passed away. But that's a good thing. I feel close to him when I'm there. But anyway, yes, it all came back in such a rush. And I was in the hall, and there wasn't anybody else out there except one man came walking past, and he said, "Oh, it's not that neat of a story." And I thought,
because you haven't lived it.
You don't know, you don't have a clue, and just go away. So
yeah, can you believe that? Here she is having this moment. She's identifying it. They say the name. It's her son's name. And then she's out there crying, and she's trying to compose herself. And some guy walks by and says, well, it wasn't that great of a story.
Well,
lack of validation for that family that had just shared their family story as well.
You are probably nicer people than I am, the both of you. But inside me came
Do you know Michelle?
Oh, she knows me, Jenny. Kitty knows me the way most people don't.
Well, if I could have physically made myself do it instead of bawling so hard, I would have tackled him and beat the living out of him. I just thought, you insensitive idiot. Why do you think I'm crying? For whatever reason, it touched me.
Yeah.
And mind your business and get out of it. It made me angry. So we never know when it's going to come. I had no indication 5 minutes prior that this would hit me like it did. And still, like today and other times, and you can both relate to this, you'll be sitting there just fine, and something totally unrelated happens, and you're in tears.
Yeah.
Kitty, how many years has it been now?
It's going on 16. He died in August. It'll be 16 years.
But how beautiful is that to me? Michelle and I are newer in our grief, but how beautiful that 16 years later, you still love your son enough that it still really, really hurts. And I think that's beautiful. And it's not crippling. It's not like you're sitting around crying and moping all day long and poor me and my life is so awful and over. I mean, you're doing wonderful, beautiful, productive things with your life. And there are still and always will be those moments when those waves hit you as if it happened 5 minutes ago. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's what I meant when I said I'm happy that I cry, because the only way I'm not going to is if I forget about him entirely. And I'm not going to do that. And it's fresh. You know that. It's fresh. I was driving through the canyon on the way to Logan, and I saw an eagle sitting on a clear field of snow. No footprints or anything. Just for some reason, he landed there and was sitting there. I had to pull over because I was sobbing. I don't know why. How does that relate? I don't know. So we don't know, and we can't dictate to a person how you're going to react, when you're going to react, how long it's going to be. You don't know. It's going to trigger an emotion. Let it happen.
I want to connect for our listeners. You said it's been 16 years, and then you said, and it's so fresh. And Jenny and I know this. It's so fresh. For us, it literally is fresh. And so you're telling us what I have now come to know. And it's also part of the reason I wanted you on this show. Or our podcast. I don't know that this is a show, but whatever we call it.
It's a talk show. It's a great show.
You gave me permission to, at a year, to not feel responsible to the rest of the world, that I have to put this behind me. And it's part of the reason why I felt inspired to do this podcast. I want to break down those cultural ideas of American grief and what it looks like and what's acceptable and what we expect from one another. That we shouldn't have expectations of the grieving. And frankly, a lot of us are grieving. We just don't know it because we've made it not okay to share it.
Mm-hmm.
And
I love, Kitty, I love what you said about people, and you kind of put them in 3 categories. And I think we could tie that into exactly what Michelle said about some of these cultural expectations in grief. You said people are either uncomfortable with someone else's grief, or they feel like they have to know exactly the right thing to say or do, or they just think you should kind of be over it and move on. And I think all of us who are listening, we're facing our own trials and challenges and will continue to for the rest of our lives. But we also love other people who are facing their own challenges that might be very similar to ours, and they might be very different. How important for us to just remember that we don't have to, we can't let our discomfort with someone's grief block them from being able to grieve. And we can't let that tendency and temptation, I love you called it a temptation to say something profound. How many times have I been tempted to say something profound? Like, I need to really think about that. But we can't let that temptation to feel like we can fix it and have the answer and put it into like a cross-stitchable saying get in the way of just listening, just be there, just cry with the person who's grieving. And then, of course, your third category of people that think you should just get over it. I feel like one thing I've really learned since my husband died is I don't see time the same way I used to. Time, I think, in our culture is very linear. We have the past, we have the present, we have the future. It's a line. You only can go in one direction. I feel like grief has taught me that time is fluid, and it's a circle, and it's a spider web, and I can feel like things happened 5 minutes ago, and oh my gosh, it feels like it's been 100 years, all at the same time. And so you can't tell me to hurry and get over it, or I should be over it by now, because it can be 16 years and very fresh, all in the same breath. And our culture doesn't know how to do that.
You're right. And I ask people now, and that I'm braver, I'll say, what does get over it mean? What do you mean? And they're stymied. Mm-hmm. Does it mean forget him? No, I'm not going to do that. Does it mean I will remember him? He's part of me. He's part of my history. He's part of me in every sense, and I'm not going to forget it, and don't ask me to. So you're right. We need to be free with ourselves. We need to understand ourselves. It's normal. Grief is normal. Let yourself grieve. Let yourself do it. Don't wallow in it. We know all those things. Don't let it stop you from living your life, but allow yourself to grieve. And if you have a day that you want to cry 16 years later, cry.
Yeah.
You'll get over it in a few minutes or a half hour, however long it takes, and go on with your life. But you learn to deal with it better. You don't get over it. You learn to deal with it better. And so we need to remember that for ourselves and with others. I have some thoughts on resiliency if you want me to
yes,
share.
We have just a few minutes. So yes, wrap us up and close us out, Kitty, with your thoughts on resiliency.
I'll be very quick. And I like to say, you've heard this saying that faith without works is dead. I think resiliency without works is dead. You have to practice it. You have to think about it.
Oh, that's fantastic. We talk about it being a muscle here. We have to exercise it. We have to use it. We have to utilize the tools.
And that strength that you have in resiliency comes from being tried emotionally, spiritually, and physically. So you kind of welcome the challenges because they do make you a stronger person. Resiliency is an exercise in faith. It really is. It is what you're doing. I used this analogy the other day with you, Michelle, where, when you're going to have a child, at the end of this labor and the pregnancy and everything else, you're going to have this beautiful child that you're going to love for the rest of your life. And, it's going to be worth it and everything else. And so you have faith and you're happy, but it still hurts like crazy. The hurt and the pain don't go away. You have to go through it to learn. But I think resiliency is confidence and a determination, and it gets stronger as you endure difficult challenges. And I think we have to give ourselves a break. Look at what we've done well. Look at what mistakes we've made, how we didn't handle it well. Learn from all of those things, and that helps you be resilient because you'll continue to do the things that went well and learn from the things that didn't go quite as well. And it is choice. I always said through David's illness, I have to get up every day and point my nose in the wrong direction and then keep going that way through that day. And some days you run, some days you crawl. But nonetheless, you've got to make some progress, even if it's just an inch. But you just get up and make the decision, I'm going to get through this day with whatever it brings. I'm going to get through it. And it's a resolve. Most importantly, I think, is you got to maintain a sense of humor. You got to laugh at some of the things. I have to laugh at my sister saying, don't go dig up the grave. I have to laugh at the man from my church in the Netherlands who called when David and wanted to know everything about him during the Hodgkins. And I told him the cancer. And he said, well, at least it's not the bad kind. My uncle came to a reunion last summer, and a week later he was dead. So you never know. And I thought, what the?
The things people say, the things people say.
That's where we could really write a book.
And I think, so you have to have a sense of humor and laugh. I always said, too, I'm going to get hysterical one way or the other, so I may as well laugh hysterically. Because it's coming, and so it's one way to relieve that tension, and you have to have that comic relief. And I think it's important too, as we practice resiliency, is to be brave enough to analyze yourself. Do you need some help? Do you really need some help? And find someone, either professionally or a friend, who you trust, and just tell them, I don't need you to solve anything. I just need you to listen. And be brave enough to say, I need some help to get through this. And if you do need it, go get it and help yourself heal that way. But be brave enough to look inside yourself and say, am I dealing well with this? Or am I a little overboard? Or am I holding too much back? Just look at yourself. Just let that grief out, let it run its natural course, learn from it, and move on to a better life. But you will never, never forget the person you love, and you shouldn't.
Amen. Amen. Well, thank you so much, Kitty, for coming on today. I really appreciate you. I appreciate you being in my life. You've taught me some great lessons. Some of them have been learned difficult on my end and with a lot of patience on your end. And but for those of you that know Kitty and I and know our involvement in the political world, if you've ever wondered what conversations are like with Kitty Dunn and Michelle Scharf, then you just got a little insight. They're full of depth and meaning in real life conversations. We cry and we also laugh at each other. So thank you, Kitty, for coming on today. I appreciate you so much.
Well, thank you. And I love you, Michelle. And I totally enjoy our friendship. And Jennie, I look forward to getting to know you better. But thank you. This has been therapeutic for me. I'm sorry I blubbered a little bit, but
no apologies. Okay. No apologies.
And, I hope it's helpful to people, and I'm learning from your podcast too. So thank you for the opportunity. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you. If you like what you've heard and you would like to subscribe, you can do that for free, just wherever you find podcasts, wherever you're listening to us, be sure to subscribe. Give us a review and a rating. If you know someone who has a real story about their life that they would like to share, or maybe it's you, send us an email at rrpodcast@ksl.com. You can find us on Facebook at Relentlessly Resilient. Remember, whatever you do today, remember to be kind. You have no idea the struggles others are dealing with in their lives.